I mentioned Jimmy Gardner in the poem about the moon landing. Today they talk about role models. When I was young, we called them simply our heroes. Old Jim was in many ways one of my heroes. He had been a drover, had great working dogs, had a good horse to ride, and knew cattle. However, he had a strange habit. Every weekend I'd see him walk from his house across the paddock and disappear down into a heavily wooded gully. I often wondered what he was up to, and one day got the opportunity to ask him, and I was stunned, to say the least, by his answer. Old Jim. Since the age of 10 he'd been droving in the sun and the rain. Semi-retired now, and the stock routes would not see him again. He was a hard man on his working dogs, but they sure respected him. And he told me not to call him Mister. Son, my name is Jim. I was not long out of school and seeking my future direction, and my interest in cattle and horses gave us a tenuous connection. In some ways he was my hero. I would listen to his droving tales, and once a week he'd head into town for the local cattle sales. When the sale was over, he would drink his fair share of beer, but I never saw him angry. This man was always full of cheer. And every weekend I'd see him walk down to this heavily wooded creek, no matter what the weather, even when it was wet and bleak. This pilgrimage to the scrubby creek really fascinated me. From his house was a good 700 yards, you see. One day he called in for a cup of tea, and we began to talk, and I figured this was my chance to ask about his weekly walk. I said, Jim, I have to ask you something, and I don't mean to pry, but this weekend sojourn to the creek, could you please tell me why? He then told me the reason, and I guess I had this look of surprise. I'll go down there for a crap, old Jim said, with a twinkle in his eyes. I didn't know what to say, and for a while I was lost for a word. This reason for his weekly walk to me seemed quite absurd. But I have an odd sense of humour, and I thought this rather funny. So I said, what's the matter, mate? Do you have a buggered dunny? Nah, it's just that when I have the need to give me bowels a push, for years I've always been far more comfortable doing it in the bush. You see, I suppose I'm claustrophobic. I don't like feeling shut in. Besides that porcelain dunny, well, I don't like backing up to the bloody thing.